She thought it was just a blind date with a single dad, until his twins called her Mommy and the truth about his billionaire identity unraveled. Emma Rivera didn't believe in blind dates, not anymore. Not after years of forced setups and shallow conversations with men who either talked about themselves endlessly or looked visibly disappointed when they found out she wasn't the kind of woman who chased influencers' trends or wore luxury perfume. She was practical, real, and far too tired for pretense. But tonight, her best friend Kayla had worn her down. "You've been single for 2 years, Emma," Kayla had said, standing in Emma's tiny kitchen that morning while pouring cereal for Emma's goddaughter. "And this guy, he's not like the others. He's a single dad. He's sweet, low-key. He brings his daughters to the pediatric clinic on his own. No assistant, no drama. Just trust me for once. If it's a disaster, I owe you coffee for a month." Now Emma was standing outside a small cafe in the quiet part of the city, nervously pulling at the sleeves of her sweater, wondering if this was going to be yet another waste of makeup and patience. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The first thing she saw was a man in a white button-down shirt, crisp but not flashy. His sleeves were rolled up neatly to the elbows, and his dark hair was a bit tousled, like he'd run his hand through it on the way in. He had a clean-shaven jaw, sharp cheekbones, and warm brown eyes that instantly locked onto hers when the door chimed. Beside him, seated at the booth, were two tiny girls, toddler twins. They had soft brown curls matching pink dresses with little bows, and identical grins smeared with what looked like chocolate frosting. One of them waved the moment she spotted Emma. The other simply stared, a curious sparkle in her eye. Emma froze for a moment, caught off guard. The man stood quickly. "Hi, Emma," he said with a cautious smile. "I'm Jason. I'm really sorry. I know this isn't exactly standard, but my sitter canceled last minute, and I didn't want to flake." Emma blinked, then nodded slowly. "Hi, it's okay. Just wasn't expecting the bonus guests." Jason laughed nervously and motioned to the girls. "This is Lila and Zoe. They're very well behaved, mostly." One of the girls, Lila apparently, climbed onto the bench and pointed at Emma. "Are you a princess?" Emma blinked. "What? You look like a princess," Lila said seriously. "Like from the books. But you have sneakers." Emma couldn't help it. She laughed. Jason looked relieved at the sound. She took a seat across from them, still a bit unsure, but curious. "So, this is a first." "Yeah," Jason admitted. "I debated canceling, but I really didn't want to. Kayla told me you were different, and I needed to meet different." The twins began coloring on the kids' menu with broken crayons the waiter had left. Jason watched them for a moment, then turned his attention back to Emma. "I hope it's not too weird." Emma shrugged. "Honestly, I think I've had worse." They ordered grilled cheese for the girls, pasta for Emma, a salad and coffee for Jason. As they talked, Emma noticed something surprising. Jason didn't try to impress her. He wasn't dropping job titles or humble brags. In fact, when she asked what he did for a living, he simply said, "Tech, software stuff," and left it at that. He was attentive with the girls, wiping their hands when they smeared ketchup on their cheeks, cutting up their food, listening to their gibberish with genuine interest. And somehow, amidst the chaos, he still made her feel like she was the only other person at the table. By the time dessert arrived, 2 mini cupcakes split 4 ways, Emma had forgotten how skeptical she'd been walking in. Jason reached across the table to hand her a napkin when Zoe spilled water near her elbow, and for a moment their fingers brushed. He smiled. "You're very calm." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You thought I'd run?" "Honestly, maybe." He looked down at his girls, who were now arguing over a sprinkle. "Most women do." Emma leaned back in her chair. "Well, I'm not most women." Jason met her eyes, and something softened in his expression. "You're really not." When the evening ended, Jason walked her to her car while carrying Zoe on his hip and holding Lila's hand. The twins waved as she pulled away, and Emma smiled to herself all the way home. She still didn't believe in blind dates. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, she believed in the possibility of something unexpected. And maybe, just maybe, something real. The morning after the blind date, Emma woke up feeling oddly light, as though someone had reached into the heaviness that had settled in her chest for months and gently lifted part of it away. She lay in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night. Jason's laughter, Lila calling her a princess, Zoe's wide eyes and chocolate-smeared grin. The way Jason had looked at her, not like a man assessing his options, but like someone genuinely trying to see her. It was strange, the way something so chaotic, dinner with toddlers, had made her feel more relaxed than any candlelit date ever had. She hadn't touched her dating apps in over a year. She'd become too used to being alone. It was safer that way. But Jason had been easy, warm, real. Still, she reminded herself as she got ready for work, one good night didn't mean anything. He was probably just being polite. Maybe he wouldn't even call. Except he did. At noon, between checking vitals and reviewing charts at the clinic, her phone buzzed. Jason W., I had a great time last night. So did the girls. Zoe asked if you were coming to breakfast today, and Lila insists you live in a castle. Emma smiled before she could stop herself. She hesitated for a second, then typed back, tell them I had fun too. I don't live in a castle, but I do own a teapot shaped like a unicorn. Maybe that counts. A few seconds later, you just became their favorite person? They texted through the afternoon, small messages, jokes, bits of daily life. Jason sent a photo of Lila asleep in a laundry basket and Zoe stacking Tupperware like building blocks. Emma sent back a selfie from the break room, wearing a surgical mask and making bug eyes over her coffee cup. By the time her shift ended, she found herself lingering by her locker, rereading his last message. Let me know if you ever want to see them again. Or me. No pressure, just putting it out there. Emma stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she typed, how about a walk in the park tomorrow? I know a spot with a duck pond. Guaranteed giggles. That Sunday afternoon, she met them at the park. Jason wore jeans and a navy hoodie, pushing a double stroller with practiced ease. The girls wore matching yellow raincoats and were holding a Ziploc bag of crumbled crackers for the ducks. When Emma approached, Lila shrieked, Princess Emma! Jason grinned. Well, now you're stuck with the title. Emma laughed and crouched down to the twins' level. I only accept the title if I get a duck crown. Zoe immediately pointed to the pond. Then we need to catch a duck. The next hour was a beautiful mess. They fed the ducks, raced up grassy hills, and tried to make daisy crowns that disintegrated within seconds. Jason let the girls sit on his shoulders while Emma took photos, laughing so hard her stomach hurt. At one point, Lila reached for Emma's hand and held it like it had always belonged there. It took Emma by surprise, how natural it all felt. Like she'd been dropped into the middle of someone else's life, and it somehow already fit her. She and Jason didn't talk much, but the silences were comfortable. She noticed the way he watched his daughters with tenderness that ran deep, how he knelt to tie their shoes without being asked, how he held a juice box with one hand and caught a falling toy with the other. When the girls began to tire, Emma helped Jason pack up the stroller. As they walked back toward the car, he glanced sideways at her. You didn't have to do this, you know, he said softly. Spend your Sunday like this. Emma looked at him. I wanted to. He nodded slowly, eyes locked on the path ahead. Most people see kids and run. You walk toward them. She smiled faintly. I didn't walk toward them. I walked toward you. Jason's head turned, his expression caught between surprise and something more vulnerable. They stood in silence beside the parking lot. He hesitated, then reached out gently and touched her arm. I don't know what this is, he said, but I like it. I like you. Emma's heart skipped. She looked up at him, her face calm but full of quiet certainty. I like you too. He looked like he wanted to say more. But then Zoe yawned loudly and flopped sideways in her stroller. They both laughed. Okay, Jason said. I guess that's our cue. Emma nodded, backing away with a smile. Text me later? I will, he said. And he did, every night that week. Over the following 2 weeks, Emma's world started to shift in the most unexpected, quiet ways. What began as cautious curiosity after a blind date quickly grew into something resembling a rhythm. One that involved late-night texts, spontaneous afternoon meetups, and an increasingly familiar place in the lives of two spirited 3-year-olds. Emma found herself learning the difference between Lila's and Zoe's giggles, which snacks triggered their meltdowns, and that Jason always packed an extra juice box just in case. There was no defining moment where things became serious. It happened, gradually like water boiling gently. She stopped checking her dating apps entirely. Her mornings began with Jason's messages and ended with voice notes from Lila, who had recently discovered how to say, "Good night, Emma. Don't let the bugs bite," even if she always messed up the last part. At work, Emma's colleagues started to notice the change in her mood. "You're smiling at your clipboard," one nurse teased. Emma rolled her eyes, but she didn't deny it. There was a softness in her now that hadn't been there before. An invisible tether connecting her to something safe, something new. But even as her connection with Jason deepened, she couldn't shake the nagging questions in the back of her mind. Who was he really? Every time she tried to ask more about his job, he danced around it. "I work in tech," he'd say vaguely. Or, "I help run a startup." Nothing glamorous. Yet he always paid for everything, drove a sleek black SUV, and wore clothes that looked subtle but expensive. Emma wasn't materialistic, but she was observant. His watch alone looked like it cost more than a month of her rent. One Saturday morning, they planned a simple outing, just coffee and a walk through the farmer's market. Jason arrived at her apartment building early, as usual, the twins already giggling in their car seats. Emma climbed into the passenger seat and smiled as Zoe handed her a tiny bouquet of crushed dandelions through the gap between the seats. "For you," Zoe whispered, proud. Emma pressed the flowers to her heart dramatically. "My favorite." They laughed the whole way there. Jason told stories about Zoe's recent obsession with worms and Lila's dramatic protest when her socks didn't match. Emma listened, contributing her own tales from the ER. A kid who'd swallowed a marble, a man who came in complaining about heart glitter. It turned out to be acid reflux. At the market, Jason let the girls pick apples and dance to live music, while he and Emma sipped cold brew and shared a croissant. It felt idyllic, almost suspiciously so. Then it happened. They were walking past a small local bookshop when a sharply dressed woman stepped out of a nearby cafe and stopped in her tracks. "Jason," she called. Emma turned as Jason froze beside her. The woman walked closer, wearing a tailored blazer and heels, her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. She pulled them down slightly, scanning Emma, the twins, then back to Jason. "Well, this is unexpected," she said coolly. Jason cleared his throat. "Hi, Julia." Emma watched his posture stiffen, not in fear but in defensiveness. He glanced at the girls, then back at the woman. "This is Emma," he said carefully. "Emma, this is Julia. We used to work together." "Used to is one way to put it," Julia said with a tight smile. "Last I heard, you were off the radar. Some kind of sabbatical, they said. Nice to see you've traded boardrooms for binkies." Emma raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Jason gave a forced chuckle. "Life changes fast." Julia looked at him knowingly, then turned to Emma. "He didn't tell you who he is, did he?" Emma blinked. "Excuse me?" "Oh, never mind. I'm sure he has his reasons. Always did like flying under the radar." With that, Julia gave one last condescending smile and strolled away. Jason stood frozen. Emma turned to him slowly. "Jason, what was she talking about?" He looked pale, like a man caught in a trap he set for himself. I didn't want to tell you yet," he said softly. "I thought I had more time." "To tell me what?" Her voice was low but firm. He glanced down at the girls. "Can we talk later? I promise I'll explain everything." Emma felt the heat rise in her chest. She looked at the girls, still happily clutching caramel apples, and bit back the fury swelling in her throat. "No," she said finally. "We talk now." Jason hesitated, then exhaled heavily. "Okay, fine. The truth is, I'm not just a guy working in tech. I'm the CEO of Wexler and Company. It's a private AI company. I started it 10 years ago. It's valued in the billions now." Emma stared at him. "You're... what?" "I wanted to tell you, Emma. I didn't want to be that guy. The one women date because of money or status. With you, everything felt real. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a walking headline. I felt human." Emma backed away slightly. "So you let me walk around thinking you were just some sweet single dad trying to figure life out." "I am that guy," he said quickly. "The rest doesn't matter." "Yes, it does," she snapped, "because now I don't know if anything you've said was true." Jason's face fell. The girls sensed the tension and grew quiet. Emma crossed her arms, eyes brimming with emotion. "I need space. Please respect that." Jason nodded once, slowly. "I will." She walked away, her heart pounding. And for the first time since they met, the distance between them wasn't sweet or soft. It was heavy and cold. And real Emma didn't return Jason's text that night, or the next day, or the one after. She wasn't angry in the way people assumed. She didn't throw her phone or tear up photos. It was quieter than that, colder. Like a door had been shut in her mind, and until she decided to open it, nothing was getting through. She spent most of Sunday in a daze, folding laundry without remembering she'd already done it, staring too long into her coffee, wondering what was worse, that Jason had lied by omission, or that she had let herself believe, for a brief, glowing moment, that she could have something real. It wasn't the money that bothered her. It was the control, the power imbalance, the idea that he had known who he was, what he was, and still let her step into his life blind, unarmed, while he sat comfortably with all the facts. She had opened herself up, let his children climb into her lap, let her heart wander toward them without realizing the ground she stood on wasn't what she thought it was. On Monday, Kayla stopped by after her shift at the clinic. Emma had barely answered the door before Kayla walked in, threw her bag down and said, "Okay?" Spill Emma sighed and sat on the couch. "He's a billionaire CEO." Kayla blinked. "Come again?" "Jason. He's not just some tech guy. He owns the company. The entire thing. The woman we ran into, Julia, she worked with him. He's practically a ghost in business articles. Low profile, but major power." Kayla let out a low whistle. "Well, that's a twist." Emma stared at the ceiling. "It changes everything, doesn't it?" Kayla tilted her head. "I mean, it doesn't change how he looked at you, or how he fathered those girls, or how he chased your giggle like it was the best sound he'd heard in years." Emma closed her eyes. "But it does change what I thought was equal footing. I thought we were starting from the same place." "And maybe you were," Kayla said gently. "Just not financially, but emotionally, spiritually. Emma, he's a man who brought toddlers on a blind date. That's not strategy. That's someone desperate for real connection." Emma didn't respond. 3 days later, she got a message that wasn't from Jason, but from his assistant. A clean, professional email with only a link and one line, "For your eyes only. He asked that you see this when you're ready." Emma hovered her cursor over the link. Her heart thudded. Then she clicked. It was a video. Jason sat on a bench in what looked like a rooftop garden. His hair was windswept, eyes tired but sincere. No suit, no polished image, just him. He spoke directly to the camera. "Emma, I never meant to lie to you. I wanted to tell you who I was, truly. But the moment I realized I liked you, I panicked. Because I knew that the moment I told you, it would put us on different sides of a wall. And I didn't want a wall between us. I just wanted time. I didn't ask you to fall for a version of me that wasn't real. I am that guy. The one who holds juice boxes and falls asleep in carpool lines. But I'm also the guy who spent years hiding behind boardrooms and balance sheets because it was easier than being vulnerable." He paused. "I never expected you. You were a breath I didn't know I was holding. The girls adore you. I adore you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know. Everything I gave you was real. Nothing was calculated, not one moment." The video ended. Emma stared at the screen, tears welling in her eyes. Not out of heartbreak, but out of confusion, of ache. Because she knew deep down, he meant every word. That night she walked to the park alone, the one where they used to meet with the twins. It was quiet, cold. The benches were empty, except one. Jason sat there, hood up, coffee cup between his hands like he was hoping for a miracle. When Emma stepped into view, he looked up. He didn't move, didn't speak. She sat down beside him. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then she spoke, her voice quiet. "I saw the video." He nodded once. "I meant every word." "I know," she said. She glanced at him. "You hurt me, not because you're rich, but because I didn't get to choose to know you fully." Jason swallowed. "I understand." Emma's fingers curled around her coat sleeve. "But you also showed up, again and again, for them, for me." He turned to her now, cautious. "So, what now?" Emma met his eyes. "We start again, this time with everything on the table." Jason exhaled slowly, and a smile ghosted across his lips. Relief, disbelief, maybe even hope. I'd like that, he said. She looked forward again, hands clasped in her lap. And for the first time in days, the space between them felt warm again. Not perfect, not fixed, but open and real. The next morning, Emma woke up to the scent of rain on pavement and the quiet hum of her apartment building, still asleep. The conversation in the park replayed in her mind again and again. Jason's words, the silence between them, the look in his eyes when she said, "We start again." She hadn't meant it lightly. It wasn't some romantic line designed to wrap up pain in a bow. It was a promise, but also a test, because starting over meant seeing all of him, his flaws, his power, his intentions, and it meant allowing herself to be seen too. That afternoon, Jason texted her a simple question. Would you and I, and the girls, maybe like to cook dinner together tonight? Nothing fancy, just something warm. Emma stared at her phone and smiled. She responded, "We'll bring the pasta. You bring the patience." At 6:12 p.m., she rang the doorbell of a home she had never been to before. Jason answered with Zoe hanging onto his leg like a koala, and Lila jumping up and down in the background yelling, "Emma!" He looked relaxed. No suit, no image management, just jeans, a worn black t-shirt, and a nervous half-smile like he was 16 again and trying to impress his crush. Emma stepped inside and stopped short. The house was stunning. Not in a cold magazine cover way, but warm, lived in, and impossibly beautiful. High ceilings with wood beams, big windows that stretched nearly floor to ceiling, toys neatly stored in corner baskets, framed drawings hung proudly on the walls, each with crooked crayon signatures. "I swear I didn't decorate this to impress you," Jason said, noticing her expression. "This was my mom's house. I bought it back when the girls were born, but kept the bones. The warmth is hers, the mess, that's all us." Emma smiled. "It's beautiful and human." "I like that." The kitchen was already prepped. Vegetables chopped, water boiling, a playlist of Motown playing softly through the speakers. Lila sat at the counter, supervising, while Zoe sorted dry pasta shapes into cups like it was a scientific experiment. Jason handed Emma an apron. "You're in charge of seasoning. I tend to get a little overconfident with garlic." As they cooked, something shifted. The tension between them softened into laughter. Emma teased him about his knife skills. He mocked her for reading the recipe out loud in dramatic voices. The girls danced to the music while holding wooden spoons, and for the first time, the four of them moved together like a real unit. Not guests, not visitors, just something whole. At one point, as they waited for the pasta to finish boiling, Emma stood by the stove watching Jason scoop Zoe onto the counter to reach the salt. He kissed her cheek as she squealed, and the image was so gentle, so profoundly loving, it made Emma's throat tighten. Jason looked over and caught her watching. He didn't say anything. He just held her gaze for a long moment, a silent acknowledgement that something deeper was being built here, something he didn't want to lose again. Dinner was a delightful mess. The sauce was too thick. Lila spilled her juice. Zoe insisted on feeding Emma one spoonful at a time. They laughed until their sides ached. After dessert, store-bought cookies hastily arranged on a plate, Jason walked Emma to the porch while the girls watched cartoons inside. The porch lights were dim. Rain had just begun again, tapping gently on the railing. Emma stood with her arms crossed, her breath curling in the cool night air. Jason stood beside her. "I know I can't undo what I didn't tell you," he said softly, "but I want to build something with you. No walls, no secrets, just us, the messy, honest version." Emma looked up at him. "I need more than words, Jason. I need proof. Time, stability, not just promises." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you to jump. I'm just saying, I'll wait on the ledge as long as it takes." She smiled faintly. "That's poetic." "I Googled it 5 minutes ago," he said, deadpan. She laughed. Then before she could stop herself, she leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. He just stood still, warm and steady beside her, and let the silence say the rest. When she left that night, the twins clung to her legs and gave her the kind of hug only a child can. Too tight, too long, full of truth. Jason walked her to the door. "No kiss tonight?" he teased gently. Emma turned, her eyes soft but firm. Not yet, he smiled. Fair. But as she stepped into the hallway, she looked back and added, You're getting closer. The door closed and Jason stood there for a long moment, grinning into the silence like a man who finally understood what it meant to wait for something. Worth it. The following week unfolded in slow, steady layers, like paint gradually building into a masterpiece. Nothing grand or dramatic happened, yet everything quietly changed. Emma and Jason began seeing each other nearly every day. Not in the whirlwind, all-consuming kind of way she'd known in past relationships, but in a deeper, calmer rhythm that made her feel unexpectedly safe. He never rushed her. Not once. Some days they cooked simple meals together, usually ending in chaos, involving Zoe demanding rainbow sprinkles on spaghetti or Lila wearing socks as gloves because she was a pasta superhero. Other nights, they simply walked. Jason would drive over after putting the twins to bed, and he and Emma would stroll the block outside her apartment, coffee cups in hand, fingers brushing occasionally but never intertwining. Emma had never known a man who didn't push for more. More affection, more time, more pieces of her. But Jason gave her space like it was a gift, and it made her want to close that space on her own. One Thursday afternoon, as the early autumn sun slanted through her bedroom window, Emma was folding laundry and listening to a voicemail from her landlord about replacing the boiler when her phone vibrated with a new message from Jason. Hey, Lila just asked if you're her forever grown-up friend. I said yes. That okay? She smiled, setting the phone on the bed. She could almost hear Lila's tiny voice saying the words, curling them around her tongue like something sacred. Her reply was instant. Yes, that's more than okay. That evening, Jason invited her to something different, a board game night at his place. Not just the two of them and the girls, but with his longtime housekeeper, Maria, and her teenage son, Jordan. Jason explained that they'd been part of the twins' lives since birth, more like family than staff. Emma was nervous. It felt like crossing into something deeper, something more permanent. She arrived wearing a sweatshirt and jeans, her hair in a messy bun, and Jason greeted her like he always did now, eyes lighting up the moment he saw her, as if no matter how often she came, it was still a surprise he hadn't fully convinced himself he deserved. Inside, the living room had been rearranged. Blankets and floor cushions were spread out, and the twins were already midway into a heated debate over whether candy could be used as game pieces. Maria was warm, sharp-witted, and immediately maternal. She offered Emma a seat beside her and said with a smile, "So you're the one, hmm?" Emma blushed. "I'm probably just a one, not the one." Maria winked. "They always start like that. Then next thing you know, you're baking birthday cupcakes for the whole household." Jason pretended not to hear, but Emma saw the faint grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. The night went beautifully off script. The board game was abandoned halfway through in favor of storytelling. The kids curled up beside Jason and Emma. Maria brought out homemade flan, and even Jordan, glued to his phone most of the night, ended up doing impressions of Disney villains until everyone was crying with laughter. And somewhere in the middle of it, between Lila falling asleep on Emma's shoulder and Zoe whispering secrets in Jason's ear, Emma realized she wasn't just visiting this life anymore. She was already living it. Later, after the guests left and the girls were tucked in, Emma helped Jason clean up. They worked in sync, washing, drying, stacking dishes in sleepy silence. When they finished, Jason handed her a glass of water, then leaned against the counter watching her. "You fit here," he said softly, like a piece I didn't know was missing. Emma met his eyes, caught off guard by how unguarded he was. She walked over, set down her glass, and stood in front of him. "Jason," she said, her voice quiet, "do you want this to be real? I mean, really real?" He didn't flinch. "Yes, more than anything." She took a breath. "Then you have to understand something. I've never let anyone this close. Not fully, not without a reason to run. And right now I'm not running. But I need to know you won't disappear if things get hard. Or if I'm not smiling every second. Or if I say the wrong thing." Jason's face softened, and without hesitation he stepped forward, placing both hands gently on her arms. "I'm not afraid of hard," he whispered. "I've done lonely. I've done silence. I'd rather do messy with you." Emma's eyes filled, and she reached up, touching his cheek. Then, without planning it, without hesitation, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't fiery. It was slow, deep, and anchored in something unshakable. A kind of knowing. A kind of finally. When they pulled apart, Jason rested his forehead against hers. "I've been waiting for that," he murmured. Emma smiled, her voice thick with emotion. "I know." And in the quiet that followed, she realized something she hadn't dared believe until now. This wasn't the beginning of a perfect love story. This was the middle of a real one. Saturday came with golden sun, crisp air, and the scent of cinnamon in every corner of the house. Jason had promised the girls pancakes with chocolate chips and whipped cream, and true to his word, the kitchen was already a mess by the time Emma arrived just after 9. She walked in without knocking, something they had both agreed to last week, without saying it aloud. Jason turned, grinning, a smudge of flour across his cheek. "You're late. Lila said she would go find you herself." Emma laughed, hanging her coat near the door. "Tell her I respect her initiative." From the breakfast table, two little voices shouted in unison, "Emma, ah!" The girls were already halfway through their sticky towers of sugar, both wearing matching pajamas with dinosaurs and ballerinas on them. Zoe waved a fork enthusiastically, sending a blueberry flying. It landed on Jason's shirt. "Target acquired," Emma joked, grabbing a napkin and tossing it his way. After breakfast, the four of them bundled up and walked to the park. It had become tradition, a way to get energy out of the girls, and for Jason and Emma to talk in long, wandering sentences about nothing and everything. They pushed the twins on swings, pointed out clouds shaped like dragons and teacups, and shared a bench as the girls built lopsided leaf piles. It felt like the start of a life. But life, Emma knew, never let good things come without testing them first. That afternoon, after the girls went down for a nap, Jason pulled out 2 mugs of tea and joined Emma on the back porch. She was curled under a blanket, watching the wind play with the trees. He sat beside her, quiet for a long while. Then he said, "There's something I need to tell you." Emma glanced over. "Okay." He looked down at his mug, then back at her. "My board is trying to pull me back in." Emma blinked. "Back into Wexler?" He nodded. "Apparently I've been too distracted. They want me back in New York full-time. High-profile appearances, investor events." The works. Emma's heart sank slowly. "What did you say?" "I told them I have a life now, one that doesn't fit into a boardroom schedule." "I told them no." Relief spread through her chest, but it wasn't simple. "And what did they say?" she asked. Jason gave a humorless laugh. "They reminded me that if I don't show face soon, they'll begin grooming someone to take my seat permanently." Emma studied him. "And does that scare you?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "I thought it would, but it doesn't." Emma felt a quiet ripple inside her. Jason leaned back, eyes on the trees. "I've spent a decade building something that doesn't love me. This," he gestured toward the house, "the silence, is the first thing that actually feels like it gives something back." She reached over and placed her hand over his. "So what happens next?" Jason looked at her, the weight in his eyes softened by hope. "I want to build something new, something that belongs to us. Not just the girls, not just me, but you too. A business that doesn't require skyscrapers. I've been thinking about starting a foundation, education and tech access for underserved kids. It's what I wanted to do before everything got so big." Emma stared at him, a mix of admiration and anxiety brewing in her chest. "You'd give all that up?" Jason nodded. "For something real?" "Yes." She exhaled slowly, not realizing she'd been holding her breath. "I don't want to be the reason you lose your empire." He turned to her gently. "Emma, you're the reason I found my home." That night, after the girls were asleep and the dishes were done, Emma stayed. Not just late, not just for a kiss at the door. She stayed. She sat beside him on the couch, legs tucked under her, hair loose, face free of makeup. Jason wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close, her head resting against his chest. They talked until the clock read midnight. They talked about fears, hers of being abandoned, his of never being enough. They talked about their past, their parents, their mistakes, and then they didn't talk at all, letting the silence speak. Eventually, Jason pulled a small velvet pouch from the side table. "I got you something." Emma looked at him surprised. "What for?" "No reason. Just Because I want to remind you. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly, revealing a simple gold pendant, shaped like a leaf, etched with the letter E. He smiled. It's not about labels or ownership. It's just a reminder that you're seen. You matter here. Tears welled in her eyes, unexpected and overwhelming. Jason, he leaned forward, his voice low and certain. You don't have to say anything. Just know that I'm in this. Every day. Every bit. She touched the necklace, then touched his cheek. So am I. And when he kissed her this time, it wasn't a question. It was an answer. The sky was soft gray the morning Emma woke up to a whisper of sunlight peeking through Jason's bedroom window. She was wrapped in the quiet comfort of the duvet, the hum of a new life surrounding her. Not loud, not rushing, but steady. Real. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from the kitchen. Somewhere down the hall, two familiar voices were already bickering over breakfast toppings. She sat up slowly, fingers brushing her hair back, and took a long breath. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't what she expected when she first walked into that blind date cafe weeks ago. But it was hers now. A life full of mismatched socks, tiny twin squeals, shared toothbrush cups, and late-night whispered promises. She padded into the kitchen barefoot and was met with the scene that had become her new normal. Zoe perched on a stool trying to balance a strawberry on her spoon, Lila giggling uncontrollably, and Jason in sweatpants and a rumpled t-shirt, standing by the stove, flipping pancakes shaped like animals that never quite looked like animals. He turned and saw her, and just like always, he smiled like it was the first time he'd ever seen her. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just honest and whole. Good morning, sleepyhead, he teased. Emma kissed his cheek as she passed him to grab a coffee mug. You should have woken me. And risk sharing pancake duty? He whispered conspiratorially. Never. The girls erupted into more laughter as Jason handed Emma a plate. She sat at the table, watching this small, chaotic morning unfold around her like something sacred. How had she ever lived without it? That afternoon, while the girls napped, Jason invited her outside. They walked to the backyard, where the leaves were beginning to fall in soft, rust-colored waves. The garden was a bit wild, overgrown from summer's end, and Emma loved it even more for its imperfection. Jason led her toward the back fence, where a wooden bench sat beneath the shade of a maple tree. Tied to the tree was a small envelope. Emma turned to him. What's this? He shrugged, but his eyes were full of something deeper. Just something I've been working on. She untied the envelope and opened it. Inside was a folded letter. It wasn't long, but every word landed like a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Emma, I didn't expect you. I didn't expect to fall in love with your laugh, your calm, your kindness, or the way you look at my daughters like they're magic instead of a burden. You walked into our lives without warning and changed everything. Not with a dramatic entrance, but with patience, with honesty, with love I didn't think I deserved. If you're ready, I want to build a family with you. Not just in the quiet mornings and easy days, but in the hard parts too. The nights when we argue, the days when the girls are sick and nothing goes right. All of it. You don't have to say yes. You don't have to say anything today. But if you want this, really want it, I will spend every day showing you that you're not alone anymore. You are home. Jason Emma's hands trembled slightly as she folded the letter. She didn't speak right away. Jason waited, quiet and calm, his heart in his eyes. When she finally looked up, she said only this. Do you have a pen? He blinked. A pen? She smiled. I want to sign my name. At the bottom. So you know I'm in this too. Jason let out a breath he'd been holding for weeks, then pulled a pen from his back pocket. He always carried one. Emma leaned against the bench, signed her name slowly on the back of the envelope, and then slipped her arms around his waist. They stood there for a long time under that tree. Later that night, they curled up on the couch after putting the girls to bed. Jason reached for the remote, but Emma shook her head and curled into his side. No TV, just this. This? This, she whispered. You. Me. Peace. Jason kissed her temple and pulled the blanket over them. Outside, the world kept spinning. The past remained where it belonged. The future wasn't certain. It never is. But for once, neither of them needed guarantees. They had the present. And that was more than enough. In my opinion, the ending of this story strikes exactly the right balance between emotional closure and quiet realism. It doesn't rely on over-the-top declarations or glittering happily ever afters. Instead, it gives us something far more powerful: earned intimacy. Emma's journey, from guarded independence to choosing love without sacrificing herself, is what makes this ending resonate. And Jason's evolution is just as meaningful. He doesn't save her with money. He shows up with consistency, vulnerability, and a willingness to let go of power in exchange for connection. What I appreciate most is that the story honors the messy beauty of building a real life. One where kids spill juice, fears linger, and love grows not from perfection, but from presence. The final scene, with the signed letter and silent embrace beneath the tree, says it all. Love doesn't always begin with lightning. Sometimes it starts with trust and the courage to stay.